More funding help came from individuals like Joseph Long, owner and president of the Long's drugstore chain. Long's interest in the project led to his personal donation of $35,000 to develop 2 reservoirs for Canada goose nesting, Ponds M and N. A few years later, Long purchased the 19,000-acre Triangle Ranch, a private tract in the project area. His purchase kept the ranch out of the hands of private developers. Later, he transferred the property to the Forest Service for development as waterfowl habitat.
I bought the Triangle Ranch because of my great belief in the preservation of wetlands. I have seen thousands of acres of wetlands turned over to farms and seen the dilution of the number of waterfowl and other wild species that exist in wetlands. Gosh, when I was a kid, we could go out on any slough up here in Northern California and shoot a bunch of ducks. That's what I lived on. Didn't have anything else to eat. I lived on deer meat and ducks.
What is it about this high desert that lends itself so aptly to a wetland, a meeting place for the masses? The answer to that question was 30 million years in the making. When the Earth was already old, so old we cannot imagine, the land that lay between what would become the southern Cascades and the northern Sierra erupted with a violence difficult to comprehend. There were quieter intervals, geologic idlings of 800 to 1,000 years when life returned. But the land would only erupt again, burying 4,000 square miles in the agonies of a birth repeated over thousands of years. The land was wrenched, compressed, eroded, and savagely distorted, leaving the birthmarks of cataclysmic forces when life returned. Upon it would be built the 10,000-foot Warner Mountains. Across it would wander the rivers. In today's geologic moment, the land rests. It is known as the Modoc Plateau. A remote corner of the plateau is called the Devil's Garden. This forbidding landscape sprawls over 700 square miles and receives a meager 13 inches of precipitation each year. Rather than a flat plain, it is a rocky combination of basins, uplands, and rimrock cliffs. It is a land abused by the elements, cracked by summer sun and winter ice. Sagebrush, juniper, and other survivors cling to life with a tenacity characteristic of the high desert flora. But in spring, the desert holds a surprise. Wetlands and waterfowl by the thousands. The key to these temporary oases lies in the soil. Here, the soil is made of hard pan and heavy clays. Snowmelt and spring rains run off the uplands only to be trapped in the basins, turning them into lush, verdant wetlands. By early summer, the desert wetlands evaporate. With them go the waterfowl, shorebirds, insects, the grasses and shrubs that provide food and shelter. And so too does the chain of life that is linked to them. If the water could be held, the abundance that marked spring might be carried through summer. The addition of the Triangle Ranch set the stage for one of the most ambitious wetland development projects the Forest Service had ever undertaken. But while the acquisition was applauded by sportsmen statewide, it wasn't as popular with the local community. Cecil Pierce, a past Modoc County farm advisor, reflects.
In a county like this, our revenue comes from property taxes mainly, and we're kind of a poor county. You know, we don't have a lot of industry to pay revenue into the county to keep it operating. And whenever you take a chunk of ground off of the tax rolls, it bothers the supervisors. This was one of the reasons that, of course, that they objected to it.
Manuel Silva, a past county supervisor, comments.
The feeling at that time was a mistrust on what Forest Service was up to. The county is about 68% federally owned lands. The greatest fear that Board of Supervisors had was the loss of revenue to county by taking private lands off the Modoc County tax roll. That loss would be your property tax.
Grazing was another concern. Livestock is king in Modoc County, and anything that threatens grass worries cattlemen. They viewed waterfowl development as a threat to sorely needed grass. Cattlemen were quick to brand the Forest Service as just another duck and goose outfit.
This was taking a productive ranch, turning it over to the federal government. They felt that the Forest Service might be taking it out of production as far as livestock grazing is concerned, because they were talking about waterfowl habitat. In the beginning, people didn't realize that there would still be a lot of grazing there. So this was a conflict on the start, too.
The Triangle Ranch has the capability of growing feed for over 1,600 head of cattle for 4 summer months. This kind of range value created the opportunity for forest managers to blend waterfowl objectives with those for cattle. The key to making the system work was the regulation of grazing. The ranch was divided into 4 management units. In one, the wettest pastures would become wetlands. They were fenced to keep livestock out. In another, the sagebrush was removed. It was seeded with grass for livestock. Other areas provided both benefits. Islands for nesting birds were built and fenced, leaving the rest of the wetland open to cattle. The groundwork for this dual objective plan began in 1979. Sometimes it took an unusual form.